Hey guys, I'm going to be answering this question from Sean O'Connor today. So thanks a lot for the question, Sean, and welcome to the group. I hope that we'll be hearing from you often. And do remember that we have our Q&A sessions during the week, usually Wednesday or Thursday in the evening. So if you have any questions or if you just want to talk anything about comic publishing, then feel free to join those. So with that, let me get into the question. Sean says he's done a lot of zines in the past, but has always left the aspect on the printing house. Now he wants to ask about the size or ratio of the paper that he should use or that's recommended. And Googling says 11 by 17 inches standard with a 10 by 15 inch working space. Is it standard or are there other sizes depending on the book size you want printed? So I'm not really a creator of comics. I do have a project that I want to complete at some point in the future, but I haven't really created any comics before. So as a publisher, I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer this question. So if there's any creators watching this, please, if you have any advice for Sean, you don't have to create a video, but if you can just leave a comment, that would be much appreciated. But I will try my best to answer this as a publisher. So from what I understand, there's no real standard size for creating your artwork. But there is kind of a rule of thumb. I don't know exactly where I got this. I think it was either from Scott McCloud's Making Comics book or one of Will Eisner's books, but I feel pretty confident about this that artwork should generally be produced at least 1.5 times the final finished trim size or to 2 times the final finished trim size. And the reason for that is that when you create the artwork at a larger size, then when you shrink it down to the final trim size for printing, it's going to look more polished and detailed than it would if you had created it at the finished trim size where it could potentially look a little bit more rough. So like I said, I feel pretty confident about that. I don't know exactly where I got it, but so I would recommend, and again, coming from the publisher's perspective, start with the trim size that you want to publish at. And I think that will just help make everything a lot easier. And then, you can always potentially change that later, but just having your target trim size in mind, I think is a good idea. And so what I would recommend is going to a website like Ingram Spark. So if you're not familiar, I do have some video content about that in the course, which by the way, my course is free if you make it to level 3 of in the school group. So that basically just means you just have to post questions, get likes, like other people's content. I think you can get to level 3 that way. And then there's a whole module on Ingram Spark in there. But it's basically a service that not only will help you print your book, so it's print on demand, but will also distribute your book because Ingram is the main wholesaler for books in the United States and to some extent in Canada. And so you can actually distribute your book through independent bookstores, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all of those retailers. And you can even get your book in on store shelves through Ingram Spark. So if you come to their print and ship calculator, just search that on Google, then they have this drop down for trim size. So you'll see that they have all the standard trim sizes. So some of the common ones that most of the time, I think the most common one I print at is 8.5 by 11. But some other common trim sizes are 7 by 10. You also have 6 by 9, which is a pretty small one, not very common for comics, but this is more for novels and things. But I have had some comics printed at 6 by 9 because it's a nice portable format, especially if the artwork is not very large. You can get it to 6 by 9. And I think there's going to be one in April that we're going to be doing a 6 by 9. And then they even have the common trim size for comics and graphic novels, which I think this is 6 and 5/8 inches. I think that works out too, but they have it in decimal here, 6.625 by 10 1/4. This is the most common trim size for comics and graphic novels. So when you go in a comic shop, you see a single issue that's like 24, 32 pages or something. That's the common size. And even when they get collected into what's called a trade paperback. All right, so you can look at any of the other print-on-demand services for books like Lulu Express, Amazon KDP, BookBaby, any of those, and just compare the different standard trim sizes. And especially like if you plan to use several of those different services, which is a possibility, maybe you want to use Lulu Express plus Amazon KDP because that makes things easier to distribute your book through Amazon. In which case you want to make sure that you pick a trim size that's common among the different services that you want to use. But in general, I definitely recommend using a trim size that's standard because it's just going to make things a lot easier when it comes to the retailer stocking your book on their shelves and also for shipping and handling and everything, because it's possible that the retailers, they might not be familiar with your work yet. Certainly, they're not always familiar with Black Panel Press because we've only been around a few years. So they're more comfortable to stock trim size that they're more familiar with. And so for that reason, recommend a standard one. And so let's say if we were going to pick 6x9. So if we were to produce our artwork at 1.5 times the trim size, then we'd be looking at 9 by 13 and a half. And so since you're working with 11 by 17 paper, then you could just draw out your 9 by 13 and a half workspace, and then you'll have extra margin available. And if you wanted to do that at 2 times, then you do 12 by 18. And so you need a larger piece of paper, I guess, in that case. But I think most of the time 1.5 is going to be sufficient for you. I know with my book, what I want to do is I want to release it as a series of single issues, especially because it's going to take me so long. So I want to do the most common size for comics and graphic novels is this one. So the 6 by 5/8, I think it is, by 10 and a quarter. And then that way I can release it as single issues. And then when I have everything finished, I can gather it together and release it again as a finished graphic novel. So that's going to be fun. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. Let us know if you have any other questions, and enjoy illustrating your comics.